Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Ukraine for the first time in absolutely ages. Now, if memory serves me correctly, other than a review of a macro beer 7 or 8 years ago, this will be my only solo brewery Ukrainian beer review on the channel. It'll be the first one from a craft brewery as well, which is quite exciting. In recent times we have done a number of collaboration beers that have involved Ukrainian breweries, but like I say, this is the first solo brewery beer review of a Ukrainian craft brewery, so that's very exciting. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is obviously from a brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys are supposed to be very, very good. They do a whole host of different styles from what I've seen, and they were one of the breweries that were really kind of starting to push their way out and get their beers across the European continent. So hopefully that is something we see again in the not too distant future. But the beer itself is a style that I very much enjoy. It is one that's very close to my heart, of course, and it has a little bit of a twist to it that you don't often see with this style, actually, at least not in my experience. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Brovary, which is in the northeastern part of Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, in the kind of central northern part of the country, and that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer from Rebrew. So this particular beer is called Sith. It is the 2021 vintage rum barrel-aged edition, and they do several different barrel-aged versions of this beer from what I understand, but it comes in at 10% ABV, and they're describing this one as an Imperial Scotch Ale. So yeah, I think you guys will know why I decided that I wanted to have a look at this one. But yeah, it's the first time I've come across a beer that's been listed as an Imperial Scotch Ale. Usually they're just, back home in Scotland, they're always listed as different kind of shilling ratings and things like this, which I'll explain a little bit later on. So I'm guessing this one might well be along the lines of like 160 shilling or something like this, but definitely very, very cool to find a Ukrainian Scotch Ale. I love trying this style of beer from different countries in the world, and we've reviewed it from some very, very unusual places, but probably Ukraine is the coolest one that we've come across so far, actually. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. The 2021 vintage of the Sith, an Imperial Scotch Ale at 10% ABV, aged in rum barrels from Rebrew in Brovary, Kyiv, Ukraine. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Rebrew. This is the very first time I'm reviewing one of their beers, as I mentioned to you, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Ukrainian playlist, which I will make because there are a number of beer reviews on the channel now that involve Ukrainian breweries, and we'll see about adding to that as time goes on. But yeah, let's go on to the brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Rebrew. So, I will apologise in advance as well for any bad Ukrainian pronunciations in this video. It's a language that I'm not really familiar with at all. But yeah, like I said earlier, Rebrew are based in Brovary, which is in the northeastern part of Kyiv in Ukraine, the Ukrainian capital, in the kind of central part of the country, if you like, or in the northern central part, I guess we could say. But the brewery was founded back in 2016, but they've been active and selling their beers since 2019. So the men behind the brewery are Dmytro Sholomko, Zhenya Deputat, and Alexander Selyuk. So Dmytro had previously worked as the general director of Google Ukraine, whereas Alexander worked in the construction industry and Zhenya was a home brewer. So quite an interesting mix of people going into this one. But Dmytro apparently first had the idea of forming a brewery back in 2014, and it was at this point that he teamed up with Zhenya. So they started to brew together in what they called the garage style. And they planned to brew volumes of around 200 litres, and they spent about 2 years developing a business plan for this, but they realised that brewing at such a small volume was unprofitable, and so they had to scale up their plans and started planning a business based around brewing 1,000 litres of beer per brew. So in 2016 they registered a company called Reformation Brewery, so hence why they've kind of shortened it to Rebrew to make it a little bit snappier, I guess. But they began to search for a premises and equipment, and this process continued for the next 2 years. So they found that trying to find a premises that ticked all of their boxes in the Kyiv area wasn't so easy, and so they soon realised that it was better to buy than to rent. So yeah, they eventually found a place and they bought it. So they invested around €450,000 in the premises, repairing it up and buying up equipment and things like this, and they eventually got the brewery up and running in 2018. So they received their licenses in I think it was early 2019, and they sold their first beers just after that. And the brewery equipment that they're using comes from Meccanica Spadoni down in Italy. But Alexander manages the business side of the brewery, while Eugenia is in charge of the production, and he is apparently a certified technologist. But from the outset, they said that they wanted to brew the American-style craft beers and introduce them into Ukraine, and a number of their early beers were named after different goddesses, and this the name of the brewery as well is a kind of reference to the mythical roots of brewing, if you like, so like Reformation, you know, kind of going back in time and you know, changing stuff and things like this. So that apparently is the idea behind the name Reformation Brew, but it could well be that the translation that I was looking at from the Ukrainian wasn't too good, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, they liked to use mythical names and name a lot of their beers after goddesses, basically. But apparently, these guys have continued to brew despite the war, and they've been exporting their beers as well, because of course Ukraine does have a better deal with the European Union at the moment to help Ukrainian businesses survive, which is great to see. But as of June 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 230 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and as I said earlier, you'll find a variety of different things in there. They've got imperial stouts, Scotch ales like this, barley wines, kind of modern sour beers, IPAs, you name it, Rebrew have tried it and brewed it. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Rebrew for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's that for your history section. Let's go on and have a little look at the artwork on this one. So yeah, there you can see there's the reference to the Sith there. I forget what film that's from, actually. I'm guessing it's from Star Wars, actually. I'm not a massive Star Wars geek, I have to say, but yeah, I have to say I do like the artwork on this one. There you can see the Rebrew symbol there with the little hop flower, which I think it's kind of got a little bit of a mechanical gear type vibe to it, which I think is quite interesting too. But like we said, this is the 2021 vintage rum barrel aged edition of the Cat Sith Imperial Scotch Ale. You can see a little bit of a silver wax thing on the top here. I was trying to cut a line in this before the video so that I could actually get it open without having to pause recording. Ended up taking a chunk off the back, but I think we'll be able to get it open. But yeah, this should be quite nice, this one. If memory serves me correctly, this was a beer that I actually got from Riku, who is my Finnish beer mule. So as always, a massive kiitos and kiitos to Riku up in Oulu for sorting this out. I'm pretty sure actually this one came through, he got this one through Alko in Finland, which is kind of interesting. They always get some really random stuff up there. I've had Vietnamese beers and stuff like that from Riku. But yeah, as I said, 10% Imperial Scotch Ale, this one. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. So, there we go. That opened up quite easily, but the wax just crumbled. So let's just be careful and make sure none of it gets in the beer. There we go. So, yeah, it seems to be okay. Let's just get this beer out into the glass and see how we go. A little bit of smoke on the opening there, incidentally. But yeah, out and into the glass we go. I have to say it does look very, very nice, this one. There we are. Nothing really in the way of sediment at the bottom of the glass as well, of the bottle as well. But yeah, it looks good. So, before the head disappears on this one, and I will say straight away, this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect from a Scotch ale, but there is a spectrum of colour that you'll find from these, but we'll come back to that in a second. But before the head disappears, we can see this beer is poured with about somewhere between a quarter and a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say medium beige head, but it looks very, very nice actually. You can see it's kind of medium bubbles, but a few bigger ones toward the top there. But yeah, it does look pretty damn nice, I have to say. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, if I shine the light through this, it's very, very dark. In fact, it's like a very dark chestnut, almost rosewood type colour, this beer. Not much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, which incidentally has faded down to be a kind of thin foamy layer, but round the edge of the glass you've got that nice thicker ring. There is a little bit of sediment in this one, you can see. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera, but you can see some sediment particles at the bottom of the glass there. But yeah, it does look pretty nice. But definitely, I will say, in terms of Scotch ales, this is one of the darker ones that I've come across before. So yeah, looks good. But yeah, to tell you a little bit about the Scotch ale as a style then. So yeah, as I said to you before, I love trying this beer style from different countries. My native beer style and seeing it brewed in different places is awesome. We've tried Japanese, New Zealand ones, Chilean ones, quite a few from North America as well. So we've tried these from all corners of the world. But yeah, the Scotch ale as a style, generally speaking, it's quite a brown sugary type beer, quite a lot of brown bready character and some nice red fruity notes, and they are not too hoppy. And I would say that there's kind of two types that you can get. You can get the more traditional Scottish style Scotch ales, and you can get the more kind of sweet and sugary American type ones. So yeah, the Scottish ones are usually a little bit more kind of toasty, and the fruits are a little bit kind of more dry, like dates and prunes and stuff like this, whereas the American ones, the brown sugars are a bit more kind of rounded and sweet, and they give you more kind of red fruity characters like black currants, blackberries, these kind of things. Those would be the main differences. But when it comes to the actual style itself, rather than the modern variants, back in Scotland these beers were rated on the shilling system. So the shilling was what was used with pound sterling before it was decimalised. And remember, pound sterling was Scotland's currency before it was England's. Not a lot of people know that. But yeah, what we had, you had the 30 shilling, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 shillings. So these were all the different types of Scotch ales that you had. The idea was that the 30 shilling one was the weakest. It contained the least amount of malt, and thus you had the least amount of alcohol, and so you would pay the least amount of tax. And as you go up the scale, you've obviously got more malt, more alcohol, and thus you pay more tax. That's how the shilling system works. Most modern takes on the Scotch ale are usually somewhere between the 80 and 90 shilling mark. But you do have some that are called, you do have a style in Scotland as well which is called the 160 shilling, and it's usually a beer that's quite close to around 10-11%, something like this. One of the real classic examples of that would be the one from Tracker House. And if you do want to try proper Scottish brewed Scotch ales, Old Jock from the Old Jock from Broughton Brewery, the first craft brewery in Scotland, is worth trying. And then also I would say the oh yeah, you could also have a little look, if you want something a little bit more modern, try Old Parochial from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels. That's a more modern American style Scotch ale. I'm trying to think of another one. Yeah, trying anything from Tracker House would also be a good shout. But yeah, that's a basic history of the Scotch ale as a style. We'll get on and actually focus about this beer. So we mentioned about the appearance of this one. Like I said, the colour of this one is pretty damn dark actually. This is one of the darker Scotch ales that I've come across. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put in will affect the colour too. But you don't often have to care about that with Scotch ales. You can barrel age these ones and affect the colour a little bit, but not too much. And I have to say, I don't think rum barrel aging is going to make the colour of this beer darker. I suspect that this one will probably have undergone a slightly longer wort boil or something like that. But yeah, let's take a wee look at the aroma of this one and see what it's going to give us. Oh yeah, I have to say, this smells really pretty damn nice actually. The barrel isn't too strong in this one. It definitely has. It kind of finds itself somewhere in the middle of the Scottish, the old school Scottish Scotch ale, and the more kind of modern, sweeter American one. But yeah, it goes together very, very nicely. It gives you everything you want. You get a bit of the barrel, you get some nice bready notes, you get a lot of brown sugar, a little touch of hoppy character still there as well, and also some really nice fruitiness coming out of this one. So yeah, the way it goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, let's break that aroma down and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. The backbone of the beer is, of course, the barrel in this one, so you can smell that lovely, smooth, oaky character in there, forming the backbone of the beer. Within the wood, you do get a little bit of vanilla, I would say, so a lovely little bit of vanilla character coming out of it. But you also have a little bit of, you can smell a little bit of the kind of brown sugary character coming out of this one as well from the rum, that lovely sugar caney note. And the rum, for me, actually has a little bit of that rubbery and banana type quality to it. So yeah, a little bit of a rubbery banana note coming out of the rum. But then above all of that, you start to get the actual kind of Scotch ale type notes out of the beer. So the backbone of the beer itself, it's got like a really nice, dry, almost like rye bready bread crust to it. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of dry rye bready bread crust in there. On top of that, you do have a sweet, kind of slightly caramelised rye bready character to the aroma. Also some kind of wholemeal brown bready notes as well. But the bread crust, as I say, comes across as a little bit more grainy, dry, and kind of well fired actually. And that is a bit more representative of the Scottish brewed Scotch ales. That's fair to say. Yeah. Within that, you get a little touch of, you do get a little touch of nuttiness out of this beer, but not too much. It's kind of like a dry almond or something like this. And then above that, you start to get the the brown sugary notes out of this one. So yeah, what I will say about this beer is that you can tell from the aroma that it has had a slightly longer wort boil, and you know, you can usually tell because when you have a longer wort boil, you get these really leathery brown sugary notes, and that's quite apparent in this beer, that you've got these lovely leathery brown sugary notes in there. But then on top of that, you've got a layer of kind of like more toasty brown sugar. You've also got a little bit of a treacle molassesy type quality coming out of this one too, so like a really heavy caramelised brown sugary note. But you do get a straight up sweet caramel, a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to this one too. And yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is really very, very nice. So yeah, big, bready and dry brown sugary notes coming out of this one. The aroma goes together really nicely in this. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the barrel and the kind of malty side of things. But yeah, I will say as well with this beer, there is still a little bit of hoppy character in this one. Of course, it's been barrel aged and then it's been released in 2021. So the longer you leave a beer like this, the more the hoppy character is obviously going to drop out of it. But you still get some hoppy remnants to this beer for sure. So for me, the hoppy part of the beer has a little bit of a kind of, it has a bit of earthy character to it. You've got a little bit of herbal note in there, but you are getting a wee touch of a kind of, you do get a little bit of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing to this one, and a wee bit of grassiness. So the green component in there is kind of what you would expect from the style. So on top of that, you've got some nice kind of fruity notes to the beer. And I have to say, based on the fruity notes, I'm quite curious as to what hop they've used in this one. Because in the traditional Scottish Scotch ales, they would tend to use Bramling's Cross from England. But another hop that would probably fit pretty well with this one would be the Northern Brewer from Germany, which is quite popular in Doppelbock, and I guess that would probably be a little bit more accessible for a Ukrainian brewery. But you could, of course, use one of the American. You could use one of the American hops in this one, like Cascade or something like that. Cascade also works pretty well in a Scotch ale. But yeah, the fruity notes in this beer. It has got a mix of the brighter American fruits and the more dry Scottish fruits, I would say. And remember, Scotland is quite famous for its berries, you know, raspberries and strawberries and stuff like this. So, yeah. So for me, you do get a little bit of this kind of sharp, raisiny note out of the beer. There's juicy plum in there, but likewise, underneath you've got a little bit of a drier prune and kind of datey quality as well. And then there's a little bit of that kind of big oily figgy note in there. And then a little bit of a, yeah, you've got a little bit more of a kind of blackberry sharpness on the front of the nose too. And these are all things that you can get from the Scotch ale actually. So aroma wise, this one is quite interesting. It's one of the more leathery, roasty and kind of almost like dry Scotch ales that I've come across actually. And you do get the nice kind of rum background to this one. As I say, it's very unusual, at least in my experience, to find a rum barrel aged Scotch ale actually. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Sith 2021 Vintage Rum Barrel Aged Edition, a 10% Imperial Scotch Ale, as they are putting it, from Rebrew in Brovary, Kyiv, Ukraine. So let's get stuck into this one. Slanja, skål, cheers, Slava Ukraine, fuck Putin, let's do this. Ooh, that is pretty nice, I have to say. Yeah, that is a nice Scotch ale, I will say that. So, as they say in Ukrainian, in budmo, that's, as far as I understand it, that is how you say cheers in Ukrainian. So yeah, budmo, they've done a nice Scotch ale, this one. Now, just on first observation, I would say that this one is more like a 160 shilling Scotch ale. So yeah, the beer that this reminds me of most would be, yeah, the Tracker House 160 shilling. That's definitely fair to say. And it is actually a bit more of a Scottish Scotch ale, this one, than it is an American Scotch ale in a sense, mainly because of how kind of dry and grainy and stuff it is. So yeah, that is quite interesting. I would also say, just on that first little sip I've had, the barrel quality on this one just adds a wee bit more depth to the beer. It doesn't dominate, actually, so that's interesting too. Yeah, that is very, very nice, I have to say. So yeah, thumbs up to Rebrew for this one. Definitely to try a few more of their beers actually. But let's do as we always do and break the beer down and explain it to you a little bit more in depth. So if we go to that middle third of your palate then, the backbone of the beer, you absolutely have that lovely, smooth, oaky character coming out of this one. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of a kind of, there is a wee bit of vanilla note out of this one, and you can feel the layer of the kind of rum spirit in there, which is nice. So the rum spirit for me, it has quite a, it's got a little bit of a more toasty character to it. It's also got a wee bit of a kind of rubbery and banana sort of thing, which I was picking up in the aroma. And yeah, I'm not massively well versed on rum, but one of my old colleagues was, and he told me quite a little bit about it. But yeah, the rum in this one for me is quite bright, a little bit banana-y, a little bit rubbery, and you get more of that the further into the aftertaste you go. So you can feel the kind of dryness of the rum barrel coming out the further into the aftertaste, which is very, very nice. But yeah, above that you start to get the actual Scotch ale elements of this beer coming out. So let's look there. So yeah, for me, the backbone of the beer side of things is you've got this nice kind of dry almost like roasty, toasty, well-fired, rye-bready bread crust. It reminds me of like the morning rolls that my gran and grandpa always used to have when I stayed with them. So they always had these well-fired breakfast rolls. So the backbone of the bread, of the beer side of things, is quite like that. But then above that, you get this nice kind of almost caramelised rye-bready layer, which is quite nice. And then above that, you get a more kind of wholemeal brown bready layer, and within that wholemeal brown bready layer, there's a little bit of a kind of, there's a very slight nutty character coming out of this one, and it's quite a dry nuttiness that comes out the further into the aftertaste you go. And that's, like I say, this beer gets drier and drier the further into the aftertaste you go, but it also gives you a really nice kind of warming sweetness. You can feel a little bit of the booze down here with this beer, but that's what you want from a Scotch ale, I would say that. So yeah, above the bready parts of the beer, you can feel that lovely leathery brown sugary note out of this one. And this beer, I'm pretty sure this has had a longer wort boil. You know, you can really, I was thinking that from when I saw the colour of it, that it's probably had a longer wort boil. But yeah, you can tell in the flavour that it has too. So yeah, you've got that lovely kind of leathery, dry brown sugary layer forming the base of the brown sugars. Above that, you get a slightly more toasty brown sugary note coming out of this one. And then in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel that little circle there where you've got that kind of highly caramelised treacle molasses sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, these are the three main layers of the brown sugars, but there is a little bit of a straight up sweet caramel and a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing comes out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, the brown sugary notes on this one are really nice, and the kind of dryness that the brown sugar gives you, and the kind of breadiness, the dry grainy breadiness that this beer has, for me, that's what makes it more like a Scottish brewed Scotch ale than an American one, because the American two-row malts will give you a much sweeter character rather than giving you the more dry grainy notes. I'd love to know what malts they've used in this one actually, if they have used a little bit of Scottish malt or if they've used German malts, or exactly what. I'd be very curious to see what the brew sheet for this beer actually looks like, because it does taste pretty damn authentic. So yeah, this is probably one of the most authentic non-Scottish Scotch ales that I've had actually. The other one I think that was really authentic was one of the ones from Finland actually, Olarinpaimo, if I remember correctly. So this is impressive actually. It's a thumbs up from me. But I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate in this beer. We'll go to the back third of the palate now. So yeah, with this beer then, and with the back third of your palate, as I've said, generally speaking, you get the same kinds of flavour on the back third of the palate, but you have to remember more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, on the back, in that border region between middle and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that sort of rye bready build-up in there. There's a wee bit of wholemeal brown bread on top, and then the base of the back third of the palate, you've got the woody character in there from the barrel, which feels a little bit drier. You've also got the kind of rum spirit too, which feels a little bit drier and more toasty actually. The bread crusty character feels like almost very slightly black actually above that, so it's a very layered quality that you get out of this one too. But then you've got the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit taller and more airy, and then above that you've got the kind of wholemeal brown bready character, which comes out of this one and feels a little bit more kind of tall and airy as well. So yeah, that's interesting. But on the very top of the malty side of that back third of your palate, you can feel some of the really dry, toasty, brown sugary characters just sitting on top of that. And so yeah, as I say, you get similar flavours on that back third of the palate, they just come out in different intensities. But above everything else, you get a really nice, like I say, you do get a very nice kind of yeasty character coming out of this beer. So let's just have a little look at the yeasty notes in this one. So yeah, yeasty character coming out of this beer. Above that back third of the palate, you get this really dense, heavy, doughy, yeasty, brown bready character. It's quite a sweet, almost like brandy-soaked brown bread, actually. So got a little bit of woodiness to it, but you can feel it's almost just wrapped in this kind of honeycomb, toasty, brown sugary character there. So that, as I say, that's the yeasty character in this one, and it sits on top of everything else on the back third of the palate there. But absolutely, you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller, and as you move into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, that is very, very nice. On to the hoppy side of things then. As I said earlier, with a barrel-aged beer, quite a bit of the hoppy character will drop out. The Scotch ale is not the most hop-forward of styles in the first place, but you do still get a little bit of green component out of this one. In the back corners of the palate, there's a little touch of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it gives you a wee bit of herbal character. And as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, you've got a little bit more kind of floral aromaticity coming out. This one's quite an oily floral aromaticity actually. Then round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is just a little bit lighter and more grassy. If I was guessing, I think this has maybe had an American hop of some description in it. But yeah, could also be a little bit of Northern Brewer, I would say. But yeah, I think that covers the green component. Let's have a wee look at the front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a nice little bit of bready build-up in there. Rye bread on the bottom and a kind of more wholemeal brown bread on top. But then the base of that front third of your palate, you've got the wood in there, which feels very smooth and almost slick actually. You've got a little bit of the rum in there, and it's almost got a little bit of a vanilla type quality. A little bit of the bread crust, and then a mix of wholemeal. It's actually more the wholemeal brown bread, and it's quite a sweet wholemeal brown bread that sits there in the base. And above that, on that front third of your palate, you get that lovely oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at these fruity characters then, just to round off the flavour section. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of the beer, again, it shows you more of the dry fruity characters the further into the aftertaste that you go. But at the back of that front third of your palate, you have more of you've got a little touch of a raisiny sharpness in there and a bit of juicy plum underneath. And then you start to get the drier prunes and dates as you go further down. Now, as you move further forward in this beer, you get a little bit of a kind of dry sultana, a little bit of an oily pear, and you also get some nice figgy notes as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate too. So yeah, when you take the beer in, you get a lot of raisiny and blackberry type sharpness. But as I say, the further into the aftertaste you go, you get more of the fig coming out. You get a little bit of the oily pear and the sultanas and the dates and stuff like that. But yeah, as you move forward into the front half of that front third of your palate, you can feel the figs are there. You've got the kind of juicy blackcurrants in the base, and then you have a more, blackberry like flavour coming out of this one the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, it's interesting. So you have the blackberry lingers there, but the drier fruits come out a little bit more the further into the aftertaste you go as well. But yeah, the fruity character is really it's the more that I drink of it, the more I would say the fruity character is a mix of American and Scottish actually. It's American in the beginning, but then it gives you more of the kind of Scottish type stuff later into the aftertaste. But yeah, I think this is a really well done Scotch ale flavour wise. Like I said, very akin to a 160 shilling, and it shows you the dryness and kind of toastiness and stuff that you would expect of a Scottish brewed Scotch ale. But yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, definitely full bodied. Yeah, it's a full bodied beer, this one. Bottom end of full bodied, I would say. Actually quite oily and clean and slick in some ways, but as I say, this beer gives you more and more dryness the further into the aftertaste that you go. In terms of IBUs, it's hard to place with this one because the beer does have a good little bit of dryness. I wouldn't be surprised if this was like 25 or 30 IBUs or something like that, because it does have a good little bit of toastiness to it as well. As I always say though, take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt. This is my weakest point of beer reviewing. But yeah, the hoppy character in this one isn't giving you too much bitterness. You'd expect that from a barrel-aged beer. And remember, when you barrel-age something, you always sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get these more infused flavours. That's just how it goes. So yeah, the green component in this beer, as I say, is very smooth and kind of slick and oily. The malt base, as we said, you've got a bit of woody dryness in there, you've got a bit of the spirit, you've got some lovely kind of dry bready characters in there, and lovely kind of dry but still sweet brown sugar. So the malt base is showing you a little bit of everything. It's very sweet, but it's got a lovely dryness to it as the flavour develops. So yeah, in terms of the fruity side of things, like I said, it's got a little bit of a sharpness and a kind of more American fruity character in the beginning, but as it mellows out, it gets more and more juicy, and more of the dry fruit starts to show its head as well. But as I say, overall, I think this one is a very, very nice example of a Scotch ale, and I'd be very curious to try a few of the other versions of this, because it's very unusual to find so many Scotch ales that have been barrel aged, and they did have quite a few different versions of this. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. Lovely, lovely beer, and a very good introduction to Rebrew, and I think a good introduction to Ukrainian craft beer on the channel as well, I guess we could say, because it's my first solo brewery beer review from a Ukrainian craft brewery. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Rebrew as well. If you are watching in Ukraine, stay safe first and foremost, but do let me know some other Ukrainian breweries and beers that I should have a look at. I would love to learn more about the Ukrainian beer scene. But yeah, we'll dedicate this review to the Ukrainian people. We'll say Slava Ukraine, fuck Putin, and hopefully there'll be peace in Ukraine with all of the lands restored very, very soon. So yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Check out my social media, check out Rebrew's social media, and I will see you guys in the next one. This was the Sith 2021 Vintage Rum Barrel Aged Edition from Rebrew in Brovary, just in the kind of northeast of Kyiv in Ukraine. Sláinte, skål, cheers, budmo, and I will see you guys very, very soon.